Welcome to a live discussion today for financial security sales professionals, where we talk about the business of selling annuities, life insurance, and healthcare coverage. Today is Friday, June 10th, and it is 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. My partner here is Lloyd Lofton with Power Behind the Sales. My name is Dan Vignal with WebPres Video. On this week's show, we will be discussing what we should consider when deciding on a wholesaler relationship and what we should expect from an IMO, FMO, BGA, or MGA. To bring an expert perspective on all of this, we've invited a special guest on today's show, Carter Wilcoxson with CSI Financial Group. Carter, welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you so much for having me, and Lloyd. I know it's been quite a while since we have initially got introduced and everything. And whenever I was invited to come on the show to speak about this, I was honored. So thank you very much for having me today.
Good to have you. Before we get into it, if at any time anyone in the audience would like to join our discussion and come live on the screen with us, please click on the private chat tab on the far right of the chat box, and then click on the link that pops up. That will put you in the queue so that we can admit you to the screen. All right, let's get started. Carter, because all three of us have probably experienced at some point in time multiple relationships with wholesalers, but you've got, I think, a very typical journey. And Carter, why don't you take us from the beginning and your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And you say typical. I'm not really sure how typical it is. Honestly, I think there's some uniqueness to it. But the journey is, it actually takes me back to how did I get into this arena in the first place? And as most of those who have met me along the way, they know a little bit about this backstory. But I actually cut my teeth in the insurance space on the retail side originally. And I was selling $2 to $10 a week supplemental life insurance plans on the Navajo reservation in northern Arizona and western New Mexico.
Wow.
So that was kind of like door to door, right?
But so here's what we would do. We would literally go out, and I was gone a week. I was what was called an enroller, right? And we would go out, and we would go like in front of these federal buildings, and we would have like this little banner right in front of our table, and people would walk up and we would just grab them. Hey, come over here, let me talk to you. And like literally it was, we're just selling this plan or whatever, supplemental life insurance, $2 to $10 a week. And we'd like go through the whole script and whatever, and like fill out the application. And then that was it. So we basically had like a quasi kiosk, if you will, just in front of these federal buildings, and, making it as if this was like a federal benefit by us being there, right? Sort of disingenuous, but it gave me an idea of what it was like as a retail advisor later on down the road. So that was hugely beneficial.
Yeah. So you learned how to sell by inference, right?
I did. Yeah, that's exactly right. So what ended up happening is I ended up becoming a caddy at a private club in North Scottsdale called Whisper Rock. And that's where.
Did your dad play golf or something?
No, my dad. That's another story.
You said caddy. I didn't think people just thought, like wake up one day and what the heck, I'll be a caddy.
Well, so I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona. And of course, this was obviously previous to me getting into the insurance world. I moved out to Arizona to become a golf pro. That's what ended up happening. And all too often, a lot of times, golf pros become insurance agents and advisors. It just kind of sort of goes hand in glove. Right? Yeah, exactly. So what ended up happening is I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Now half of my life, I just turned 50 this year. I moved out here 25 years ago. So half of my life has been spent in Phoenix, and but it was all with the intention of getting to the golf business. And I didn't really have aspirations of like playing professionally, so to speak. I was just looking to get into the golf world. So one thing led to another, and I ended up going. The short story is I was selling these $2 to $10 a week supplemental life insurance plans. And my wife said, we can't make it on this, what you're doing and everything. We're getting ready to have our first child, Caitlin, who now, ironically, she answers right now. She's at our office. It's my wife's birthday today, so I'm actually working from home. She's at the office right now. She works for us from noon to 4, covering the phones, just answering the phones. And she's 18. She graduated high school this year. So we've had a lot of big events have actually been happening in the Wilcoxson household. So she was like, hey, it's not cutting it, this whole thing. Plus you're gone for an entire week, living in hotels, going to different parts of the reservations up in northern Arizona. I'm pregnant. We can't have this. There's got to be something more. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go across the street. We were actually living with her parents at the time, my now in-laws, obviously. We were living with them as I was trying to just get that off the ground in an area in North Scottsdale. Wisbrook happened to be basically right across the street. I went in to interview to start caddying. And quick little sidebar, the only reason why I even knew about that is my best friend that I met whenever I first moved out here, his name's Craig Murphy. He had told me that they were going to start a caddy program probably a couple years before this, right? Before I even got into the industry. So because I remembered that, I'm like, well, sweetheart, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go across the street. I'm going to see about getting a caddy job, and I'm just going to make ends meet. I'm going to do whatever it takes to put food on the table, and we're going to go out. We're going to get our own place, because we were living with her folks. We're pregnant with our first child. She's like, I can't live here anymore. So I said, I'm going to go across the street. So I ended up going across the street, and I got a caddy gig. So that's how that all sort of started. Fast forward, I'm caddying there for about 2 years, and I'm caddying for a gentleman and have been for quite some time, only because the guy's regular caddy didn't show up that day. And all I know is that this guy has given us, gift certificates to like one of the nicest steakhouses in Scottsdale, as a wedding gift, early on. And we ended up, I ended up coming home one day after caddying for like 2 years for this guy. And I come home, and I'm also bartending. At this point, I'm completely out of the insurance business, right? So I'm caddying during the day. I'm bartending at night at PF Chang's. And I'm working, 14 to 16-hour weeks, burning it from both ends, just trying to make ends meet, right? And I come home.
You're burning it from both ends to get your wife off your back.
Well, exactly. But we have our own apartment now, and we're a family. My daughter's been born at this point now, and our first child. So I come home after caddying, and now in the summertime in Phoenix, it gets pretty hot, and I'm still working here in the summertime. So I come home, it was like in September, and I'm like, man, sweetheart, this is really getting old, caddying today, bartending at night, but I don't have to go bartend that night. And she goes, well, why don't you just ask Ron for a job? That's the guy who I was caddying for. Why don't you just ask Ron for a job? And I'm like, I already caddy for the guy. Like, how do I even ask him for a job? Long story short, he ends up hiring me. I end up, going and working with him, like months later, actually. And that was like in May of 2004, maybe is what it was. And that was my exposure into the IMO, FMO world. And I was just basically, a glorified telemarketer. In fact, I can remember whenever I first went in there, and I'm just like, interviewing.
Was that Sure West?
That was Sure West. That's exactly right. So I remember going in, and I had no idea. I had no clue what an IMO was. Zero, right? Independent distribution channel, whatever, what way you want to look at it. But, that whole distribution model, I had no clue. All I knew is that I was going to get an opportunity to have an interview, to come work for somebody where maybe I didn't have to work, 14 to 16-hour days and never see my family. So what ended up happening is I go in, and I'm just listening to the bullpen for like an hour and a half, just because he said, come and see if you're, it looks like you're a good fit for us. Come and see if we're a good fit for you. So I go in, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm listening to the internal wholesalers. And I'm literally 10 minutes into there, and with no clue of what the business is. And I was like, oh, this is just a telemarketing job. Okay, well, I've done that before. I can do that, no big deal. So that was how little, experience that I had and understanding. But of course, the internal wholesaler has really morphed a lot over the last 15 years. And so yes, I was a glorified telemarketer in the beginning. And, so that was my infancy to get into the independent distribution model. And that was sort of the formation of where I'm at today.
What year was this when you started telemarketing?
Yeah, so that was May of 2004. Whenever I first started, glorified telemarketer, right? And I'm just smiling and dialing, and you got the list, and you're calling the insurance producer, and I didn't even know what I was talking about in the beginning, right? I mean, there wasn't really a lot of quote unquote training. They just kind of sort of threw you to the wolves, and they go, "Here's your list. Just make as many dials as you can," and cold calling and everything. And all I knew is that I was energetic, I was optimistic, and I can remember some of the mentors early on. They would listen to me as I'm calling and connecting with somebody. And of course, back in those days, it was all phone sales, right? There was no digital, virtual meetings or anything like that, right? But I remember that I hung up the phone, and my mentor at the time, he goes, that producer has no idea what it was you just said, but he sure is excited to find out more.
So how long were you with Sure West? And when you left, what impression did you take with you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I was, all in all, it was probably right about 10 years that I was with Sure West. And that brings me to my next journey. What happened was, and this is kind of a two for answering your question, Dan. What happened was I had formed a relationship with a producer in the field that was an estate planning attorney. And what I ended up doing is I flew out there, I met with her and everything. Ironically, we happened to share a birthday. Her birthday's January 2nd also, right? So we had a lot in common, and she also was insurance licensed. So she would do some insurance stuff, which, through the wholesaler, she was writing that and everything. But that's how we started our relationship, which led me into kind of sort of being not necessarily tired or fed up with the wholesale world, even though there is some truth to that. But because I'd worked with advisors along the way, I thought to myself, well, man, I got this great relationship. She's willing for me to fly out there and work with her clientele. We just split the business all together. And, whenever I would go out there, and her business or her operations were in outside New Orleans, so in Louisiana. So what I would do, ultimately what ended up happening is I left the wholesale world and went into the retail world. And I thought, well, what a great way to break into it. I have this relationship that I've formed, and I'm going to fly out there once a month for an entire week. And what she did is she put in front of me client after client after client after client of hers as an estate planning attorney to implement life insurance and annuities.
Wow.
Right? A great way to break into the industry.
Yeah.
So she had to have a lot of faith and confidence that not only would you make a good impression to make her look good, but that you wouldn't take away from her, right?
So Lloyd, the whole part about everything that an advisor needs to understand is that we are in the relationship business, right? And you have to have integrity through and through, right? So when we talk about centers of influence in a lot of situations, and attorneys are one of those quote unquote centers of influence. I'll get more into that about why that's a broken misunderstanding for sure. But yes, I had formed a great relationship with her. Obviously, it benefited me hugely, the fact that, and of course, I was introduced to her from one of my advisors in the first place. So that helped. But then we shared the same birthday. So we had all this synergy. And she understood the benefit for her clients as an estate planner. That's why she had her insurance license also, right? She understood on how estate planning and financial planning, especially with life insurance and annuities, and how that all melds together. She understood that about the need for that, and of course, I understood more about why that was needed and necessary as well. So yeah, we formed a great relationship. It didn't happen overnight. Obviously, that took a little bit of time for her to have the confidence of knowing that whenever I sat in front of her clients, that I was going to be incorporating things that were going to be beneficial. But she had already bought into the whole needs of estate planning and of life insurance and annuities anyway.
Were you placing the business through Sure West at that time?
So interestingly, whenever I broke away from Sure West, I ended up putting some of my contracts with some other IMOs that I thought would be beneficial, not necessarily because Sure West didn't have, the same products, which sidebar, right? Here's the thing that we wanted to address, and we'll get more in this later, I'm sure. Advisors hang their hat all too often on products, pricing, and performance. And when you do that, you commoditize yourself, right? So what ended up happening is that of course, I've been in the industry for a long time. When I was at Sure West, I was the number one internal wholesaler of the Annexus Group products while I was there. So I rubbed elbows with all these other different IMOs that were part of the Annexus Group. So because I had formed, going back to the relationship part, because I had segued away from there and because I had formed relationships with other IMOs, I actually made the decision I was going to put the majority of my business on the annuity side with another IMO that had some of the Annexus Group products. But the life insurance I was putting through Sure West primarily. And that was, to answer your question, that was sort of how I was able to hedge my bet, so to speak.
So what was the next step in your journey?
Yeah, so the next step in my journey was, again, the understanding of, and what makes me unique, I think, is that because I've had this retail and I've had this wholesale experience, understanding what was missing and lacking in the industry, right? So at that time, I'm trying to build my business up, and I go to the IMO that I'm appointed with, whether that was Sure West or whether that was the other IMO, happened to be FIG out of Cornelius, North Carolina, and I still have a great relationship with those guys. And in fact, speaking of golfing, one of my the wholesaler that I have my contract with, he's coming on my boys' golfing trip next year, so I'm excited about that. So anyway, the understanding of the connectivity between estate planning, financial planning, advisors trying to grow their business, and my, benefit of having a great relationship with like that was great for me. But what ended up happening is I live in Phoenix, Arizona. She has a practice in, Covington, New Orleans, Louisiana. Well, I wasn't going to move my family there. And, trying to follow up with clients because you didn't have the types of systems we have available now, because this was 10 years ago.
Right?
Yeah, and I was only there once a week, once a month, right? For an entire week, once a month. It was hard to sort of follow back up with those clients, and then he had to sort of like re-engage with them again, and you're trying to remember Mr. and Mrs. Jones over the telephone, as you're like going sort of like through the sort of the illustration and why you needed to do this and the tax benefits and all those things that come with life insurance and annuities in the first place. By the way, this was pre-WebPres. Would have been very beneficial had I had WebPres at the time. So anyway, I started thinking about like, how am I going to replicate this same model with maybe an attorney out here in Phoenix, Arizona? It was a great way to start doing business, but I needed to replicate it here closer, right? So I ended up deciding to break away from the retail space. I had a conversation with someone. I share with my vision as far as like starting my own wholesale company, and they invested in me to start CSI Financial Group. It'll be actually 8 years in July. But because I had the understanding of what a wholesaler goes through from that perspective and what a retail advisor goes through, the missing things that were needed and the connectivity on having, estate and financial planning be together, that is what ended up creating what we call the advisor partner platform, where we bring all the tools that are necessary using estate planning as a foundational approach to growing your practice through AKA client acquisition, right? So we built entire, workshops, we can fill the seats, we literally do end-to-end client acquisition servicing, because as I said earlier, the downfall that any advisor has is that they hang their hat too much or depend too much on the products, pricing, and performance of whatever it is that they do. Well, the end user consumer that I've dealt with in the field, which gives me a unique perspective, they already know as a salesperson, right? If you're selling life insurance or annuities, that you're going to try to sell some product to them. But if you start with estate planning as that foundational approach, that may be a slower sales process, but it's going to help with not only the stickiness, but it's also going to help with introductions to other of those same types of households that they're connected to. So that's that kind of sort of makes my entire journey from, sort of retail to wholesale to retail to now we've formed CSI Financial Group to be the client acquisition focused model for advisors to help them grow their practice that want to sell more life insurance and annuities.
I think the industry as a whole has done a poor job. The industry complains that consumers think that we're a commodity, as you so rightly identified. But yet when organizations, IMOs, carriers, when they recruit agents, what they recruit agents to is a product, a price, and a commission, right? So IMOs say, jump on this sales call on Friday. And what the sales call is about is a carrier tells about a product they have. And then when the advisor talks to the marketer talks about the leads and the commissions. And nowhere in there does it talk to the salesperson about what you're identifying, which is how to open a conversation with a prospect, how to build a relationship with them, and then have a pivot to solve their problems, which typically, and again, as you're rightly pointing out, the product is like on the bottom of the list of things that are important, right?
Yeah.
So that starting off with estate planning and trust and just the littlest thing, like who's on the bank accounts, right? Who's actually on the bank accounts? So when one spouse is disabled, the other one can still get access to it. The little things like that are free. When you listen, let me finish this question. When you think about back in the day when you started on the phone and you listen to advisors today, what do you hear? Do you hear anything different in terms of what they're missing? Or are they complaining about the same things now as they did in 2004?
That's such a great question. That would like ring true like over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And this may sound, for your listeners or viewers today, this may sound familiar, right? On the phone, over and over and over again, I would be asked, Carter, how do I get in front of more prospects? And bigger than that, how do I get in front of more ideal prospects, right? And at the time, I was like, well, I got this product. Just sell the product. Well, it doesn't matter how great your products are if you've got no one to sell them to. It literally matters not.
And if you sell 5 products, we'll pay for a direct mail drop for you, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? So which one, the chicken or the egg, which one comes first, right? So sometimes you just have to take an interest in the ability of the advisor you're talking to. And I'll use that word, loosely, obviously. Advisor could mean RIA, could mean registered rep, could mean insurance advisor, right? But sometimes you have to actually put skin in the game first, right? You actually have to invest into their practice, but you have to recognize that they have the ability to be able to follow a process. And that's what we've really done is we've created an entire process with an ecosystem that helps advisors stand out and win what I call the relationship war. I talked about it early on in this. We're all in the relationship war out there after the same, I'm saying we financial advisors in the boomer market, especially your listenership for sure, right? If you're selling life insurance and annuities, it's probably 50 and up. That's your demographic that you're dealing with primarily, right? Those who have the money, so to speak. But you have to understand that it's super competitive, right? 10 to 12,000 baby boomers a day are retiring. You know the stats, right? That are retiring every day for the next, 15, 16, 17 years, something like that, right?
Until 2030. But let me ask you this, because the disconnect here, I come to you and I'm a life producer or an annuity producer. Maybe I'm even pretty good at that, right? Yeah. But you're going to pivot me to estate planning. And for a lot of advisors, agents, advisors, whatever we want to call them, even good producing life agents, even good producing annuity advisors, the pivot to estate planning, a more complex issue, feels like over their head, right? How do you pivot them to that? How do you pull their confidence far enough where they look at the resources and go, yeah, I can learn this?
Yeah. So that's been the biggest challenge, right? The biggest challenge is for them to even understand why it's even relevant to them. Why do I even need to go down that road in the first place, right? So you kind of have to start with the end in mind, right? Number one, all you have to think about is how many of your competition are addressing estate planning and start. It's very small. There's very few advisors, especially in the insurance world, that are even using estate planning as a foundational approach, right? So it's all about opportunity. Secondarily, we have to definitely educate, enlighten, and empower. We call it the 3 E's, financial advisors on why estate planning is critically important for your clients in the first place, right? You can be their hero by bringing to them the solutions that we can provide. So I think the biggest difference for us is that we don't just tell you like, hey, you should use estate planning as a foundational approach or whatever. We actually have the tools and the team that are provided for you to not have to be a specialist in estate planning. You just have to recognize the fact that it's a great opportunity to differentiate yourself, right? If you were to ask an advisor, 100 advisors right now, what makes you different versus your competition? What do you think their answer would be?
The product.
Everybody's got the same product, though, right? So again, going back to products, pricing, and performance, right? It's a commoditized industry. There has to be a true differentiator. What you have to do is find a need and fill it. Here's a statistic that I use all the time from Wealth Council. You can look them up, wealthcouncil.com. 83% of Americans do not have this necessary tool that we call an estate plan, right? Using wills, trusts, and all this stuff. And what this industry really has done, what that industry, the estate planning industry, typically legal industry, what they've done is they've done a really good job of protecting their own area of expertise. And it shies and it scares away a lot of, advisors to even dabble in that space, so to speak. But I can tell you right now, if you, just Google estate planning advisors, you'll find the most successful advisors absolutely have estate planning as a foundational approach, or at least an integral part of their business. They're the ones that are the most successful. And the ones that do that, especially our advisor partners, as we call them, if you ask them if they would do their business any other way ever again, they would be like, never in a million years would I ever do. In fact, I've had a lot of my advisors that they're like, they finally get to the point where they're like, Carter, I finally understand what it is that you were saying on you can't go after the money first. You have to build a relationship. You have to build trust with your clients. And how do you build trust? You build trust with your clients by not being just transactional, by providing a service that they actually care about. Here's the number one thing we've learned about the end user consumer when it comes to estate planning. And I'm talking about the mass affluent, right? The mass affluent makes up that $500,000 to $5 million, assets, if you will, right? We're not talking ultra high net worth here whatsoever. We're talking the mass affluent who have assets, who do not consider themselves, wealthy whatsoever, but they have assets, right? Which is why we call it family succession planning. Thank you, by the way, Dan and y'all. You actually shared it. And it is. It's all about family succession planning. In fact, the whole phraseology of using estate planning, that's industry jargon that the end user doesn't even understand what you're talking about anyway. In fact,
it turns off a lot of people because the colloquial understanding or epistemology of estate planning is for large estates. We see it in our minds as a large mansion on an estate. That's what estate planning is. And so as soon as you use the word estate, you turn those people off. They go, well, it doesn't apply to me. So a good point.
Let me ask you this question here. So you speak so confidently about something that is so common sense. But you know the saying, right? If common sense was common, more people would have it.
It's very uncommon, yes.
Right. So back in the day before you had all this common sense, when you're seeking out these resources, so many times advisors, and I've been there. I remember the days when I did financial advising and I brought my laptop in a house. I brought my little mini printer. I brought my network card in so I could get internet connection, right? Yeah. And I had those sample wills on my computer that I used to fill out and print out for people. and then they would take to my lawyer referral that I was sending them to. Before you got that common sense and you're seeking out the resources and the tools to put this package together, how many bogus programs did you get involved in, and how do you avoid those bogus programs?
I got to tell you, Lloyd, first of all, you were dating yourself a little bit there, but, I tell people now, especially as I'm educating advisors who are like wanting to learn more about how we collaboratively work with them, right, and their clients, and we become the estate planning solution, aka family succession solution. I tell them on a regular basis that I essentially went to law school for all intents and purposes for like the last 5 or 6 years, right? Understanding kind of the fine line to have to deal with, and understanding legal protocols, and understanding the digital tools that are available and accessible, and who does what, when, why, and how. But I've been so, in my LinkedIn profile says this, right? Laser focus on client acquisition, right? I just happen to use this topic and in our digital estate planning tools and build an entire educational system around that. But I also provide the marketing tools that advisors need. Obviously, one of them is WebPres, which I'm a huge believer in WebPres, and the drip marketing that's part of the campaign that we can do. That's part of the package that advisors can buy into to get skin in the game, which we need them to.
And it's something they don't have to focus on. They can focus on what makes them money, right?
I don't want them.
Can I interrupt here? Because I don't want to get off track. But I think this is really important. What I'm hearing you say, Carter, is that what an agent or advisor should be looking for in an IMO or an FMO or any sort of wholesale relationship is, do you bring me or do you avail me of the resources that are going to put me in front of more people? Is that correct?
That's it, right? So we have a mentor program, right? Other advisors that are in the field, just like the advisor who's currently in the field right now, helps to actually teach them all the things that make them successful using the tools that we've created, the resources that we've developed over 6 years. Again, this is a culmination of all these things, right? Which is why IMO, FMO, and in my recruiting video, and thank you for putting up my website, there's literally a video on my homepage. If you listen to that, I say how we are a PDO, a practice development organization, right?
Oh, that's good. That's
right?
Good. Yeah.
Because you really need to have practice development. You need all of those resources. But the thing I understand, this is 20 years being an advisor to advisors, is that it's hard to afford a bunch of these resources. So we make them available to you. It's hard to afford the tools. It's hard to even find all the resources, right? If you were to do this on your own, you couldn't do it. Arguably, you couldn't be able to do what it is that we put together, right? But I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have the knowledge and experience of being in the field as a retail advisor and being in the field as a wholesaler, right? And understanding the things that we're missing. So yes, to your point, Dan, you really have to take a good, solid look at, am I making a percentage over street level for this for this IMO or FMO that I'm working with or whatever? What does that really get me? Well, all it really gets you in a lot of instances is just more money when you sell something.
Right.
Our goal and objective is to make you twice as much money, 3 times as much money ever at street level commissions, because we get you more of the advisor or clients to be able to sell more of those things, right? So if you make 8%, just using numbers at it, if you sold $2.5 million of annuities and made 8%, or if you made 7% and sold $5 million of annuities, which one would you rather have?
Right. So one of the corollaries, and I know this is a favorite of Lloyd's, so I'm going to ask him to comment on it, and then you follow up on Lloyd. And that is, so you talk about the resources that help people, help advisors get in front of more qualified target market people. But the second thing is training. An IMO, HMO, the wholesaler should also provide training, not on just how to use the resources, but as you said, you spent the last 5 years as a quasi, estate planning attorney, learning about all that thing. And as Lloyd, you said earlier, a lot of this stuff, when you talk about estate planning, goes right over somebody's head, and they go, "I'm not qualified to do that. I don't know how to do that. So I'm not going to go with that IMO or that PDL or whatever it is. I'm not going to go with them because it's too sophisticated for me." Lloyd, talk a little bit about how important the decision to choose an IMO, HMO wholesaler is about training and modern day training, not old school training, but real training on how to sell and how to know the knowledge you need to get into those markets.
Well, I was gonna ask Carter about this a few minutes ago. I remember standing in a classroom with 40 agents in the room. We flew them in twice a month to put them through training, and one of the agents was complaining about a product. These were primarily health and life products. He was complaining about a product from this carrier I was doing the training for, that he could get 5% more commission somewhere else. And I asked him, the 40 agents in the room, and my first question to him was, well, what's their issue rate and what's their take-in rate? And you could see every eye in the room eased over. Like I had no idea what the hell I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because what I said to them is, if your closing rate's 10% and you're making 2 sales a month, but you're losing 15% of your submitted business because it doesn't get issued, what's 5% of nothing? So if your issue rate is 67% versus 77%, and you submit 5 pieces of business, where are you making the most money? They couldn't do the math.
Yeah, I believe that.
And the reason for that is because nobody taught them how to run a business.
Right.
They think their job is to order a lead, make an appointment, present a product, and make a sale. And the industry's at fault because they recruit you to a carrier, a product, a price, and a lead. That's what
Glenn Ross.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I asked the question earlier. You take somebody that is a decent life producer. Maybe they're doing 100, 200,000, 300,000 of whole life a year. Maybe they're doing $5 million with annuity a year. They think they're doing okay, and they come to you, and we talk about family legacy and all these kind of stuff, and it's like this. How do you onboard them with the concept, and then progressively build a skill set with them?
Yeah, well, so that unfortunately just takes time, right? There has to be a willingness to want to understand why it's important for them to have quote unquote estate planning, right? So we have to deliver the education to them on the benefits, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to do anything if it's not beneficial, right? I mean, for sure. But we leverage the fact that we have advisors that are in the field that are going to mentor you, right? So don't even take my word for it. Look, I sit at the home office, right? And I'm the CEO, and I'm never out in the field or whatever. Forget about the fact that I've been in the field before, right? What do you know, Carter? You're not out here now. It's different out here now, right? So I just made the decision that part of the advisor partner platform was going to be mentoring, right? So people in the field, don't take my word for it. I'm going to introduce you to multiple people in different areas, not in competition with you, right? Because that's important as well. That listen to them. They'll have a 30-minute conversation with you. They'll tell you why it was so critically important, why they made the pivot, why and hey, guess what? CSI has all the things you're going to need. Just take our word for a second on that. CSI is going to have all the things you're going to need. And here's how it's changed my practice. Here's why I would never do it any other way. And here's why it's not what it is you think it is. And you have to all of a sudden become a specialist in quote unquote estate planning, or be concerned with giving legal advice, right? That's another thing that the legal profession has done a good job of. Like right. You can't say estate planning. I'll ask a question of an advisor, and it'll be just like this. Like I'll ask them, are you an estate planner? Right? And they'll sort of pause for a second. And they're like, no, I'm not. Right? And I'm like, here's the problem. When I said, are you an estate planner? Automatically, you thought I said, are you an estate planning attorney? I didn't ask for an attorney. I asked for an estate planner. So let's just go back to the simple phrase or the simple, term, estate plan. What's an estate? An estate is everything you own. Dan, you have an estate. Lloyd, you have an estate. Carter has an estate. It's everything I own. It's everything you guys own. Okay. Now, if I'm talking to the insurance producer, especially because they're scared of even dipping their toe in this area, I'm like, okay, now what do we have to do? We have to plan your estate. So let me ask you, have you ever filled out the beneficiaries on an annuity application before, or a life insurance application, right? You name, Mrs. Jones, or you name the kids, or you name the trust maybe because they have a trust, right? That's the beneficiary. Guess what you just did? You just planned their estate. That's what makes you an estate planner.
Yeah.
It's no more complicated than that. It's just that, right? So the beauty of our platform of using estate planning is that we actually have an attorney that's part of your team to help facilitate. I want to give you just a quick, success story, if you will. We just had an advisor do an event that we filled the room. The advisor didn't have to pay anything. There's a cost to this that we absorb, right? The advisor didn't have to pay anything. We had the mentor that literally trained him. He was there for 5 days. We filled the room. He had 124 people come in West Palm Beach, right? Over 2 nights at a community center, right? We already know the exact demographic we need to get.
During COVID, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it's during COVID. This was literally, 2 months ago, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying people have the middle fear about it, and you got seats in the butt.
Butts in the seats, yes. We filled the room so much that he had to actually get a bigger venue, because originally he didn't think, he was like, I'll get the smaller community room and community center room because I'm not sure if we're going to get even 25 people here. So he ended up having to get a bigger room, and then he had to wait list people, right? Okay. This tells you the yearning that the general public has for this topic in and of itself. And then, of course, you got to find all the partners to partner with and everything, too, to make sure you get the right demographics and the right people in the seat, right? Because you can fill a room with worthless, quote unquote, people, right? You want to get ideal clients there. Right. Anyway, so using our entire system and our team and everything, he's already onboarded 9 households out of that event.
Wow.
Okay. That's client acquisition using our tool, right? But here's the best part about it. He's additionally onboarded 2 households that were referrals from part of the 9 that came to the event.
That's fantastic.
So what I say all the time, Lloyd, I'm not making these numbers up, by the way. What I say all the time is it's not what it is, quote unquote, estate planning. It's what it does.
Right.
And what it does is it gets you ideal clients using our team of specialists that make you look like the hero and the superstar that ends up ultimately, by following our steps in our process, our proprietary process, it leads to more life insurance, annuities, and assets under management.
So let me ask you this. You bring an agent an advisor on board. Let's break up 2 different kind of advisors.
Okay.
The advisor that comes on board and follows the program to a T, and the one that doesn't. So talk about the one that doesn't and what they need to do differently.
Well, if they don't, we will guarantee success if you follow our process. Guarantee success, your money back, whichever way you want to look at it, right? Because there's a kit that they actually buy, very small cost, by the way. And then of course there's revenue share arrangements based upon, because we got to pay for our people and things of that nature. Yeah. But the ones that are successful are the ones that just follow exactly what the program is. The ones that are unsuccessful are the ones that are like, well, I'm going to do it a little bit different here or a little bit different there, right? I built the platform to just follow the process to just be successful. And again, don't take my word for it. Just follow the mentors training that they're going to give you that's made them $700,000 this year or $1 million, during the time of COVID, by the way. So the successful ones are ones that follow suit. They don't try to jump the gun. And all too often, the problem is they're so accustomed to being transactional, and I'll come back to that in a second, but they're so accustomed to being transactional that they sort of get in their own way, right? Because they've just been accustomed to that. Now, if there's anybody on this call or anybody that's listening, right, that understands a transaction has to occur to monetize a relationship, it's this guy. I get it. I understand that has to happen, and it will happen. Our process just happens to be one that's more like slow and steady, because we're trying to help you build a business. Now, you have a lot of companies that are out there right now today that are trying to tell advisors, we got all these leads, right? We're not in the lead acquisition business. We're in the client acquisition business, right? That's what differentiates us. And if you are willing to be open to listen to what it is, and don't just take my word for it, take 5 other people that are out there in the field working with clients all over the country, by the way. It's not limited to just Florida. I mean, Missouri, Arkansas, Arizona, California, all over. Take their word for it. I knew early on that an advisor is going to listen to another advisor way faster than they're going to listen to me, because no matter how much experience I have in the field, and I just shared what that was, it won't resonate as much as it will with someone who's actually out there grinding every single day.
So
right?
talk about the difference in the platforms between your CSI platform and your Epic platform.
Yeah. So here's what we recognize as an IMO and as an FMO is that we didn't want to limit ourselves on our scope. So when I said earlier, I'm going to use the word advisor loosely. And a perfect example is this. I was meeting today wearing my Epic hat, right, as the estate and legacy planning solution for advisors and their clients who sometimes can't work with a certain IMO, right? They can't work with CSI Financial Group. So CSI Financial Group in and of itself is a client of Epic Services, which you're going to show here in a second, I'm sure. But Epic is the estate and legacy planning solution and really marketing arm for advisors and their clients that works collaboratively with them, providing this type of service. So we can work with registered reps. We can work because it's not we're not an IMO. We don't have an insurance license or anything like that. We are just the estate and legacy planning solution for advisors and their clients, and we bring all the tools that they need to then deliver to their either already existing clientele, right? The already convinced, as I call them, or if they want to do, stranger marketing, get the butts in the seats, we do all of that stuff. CSI happens to use all of Epic services as a FMO, IMO, right? To then, provide those insurance solutions, right? So we are, at the end of the day, CSI Financial Group, an IMO. Epic just happens to be that estate and legacy planning, I'll call it arm, I'll call it division, whichever way you want to look at it. But those are the two differences between the two, because if you're an LPL rep or whatever, upper right-hand corner to be able to close that little form out there. If you're LPL or if you're Cambridge or if you're an RIA or whatever, some of them can't work with an IMO. And I didn't want to, not allow them to have access to our tools also for their clients that are in that mass affluent marketplace, right? To help them grow their practice. So we work with a very unique level of advisors on a regular basis, whether that's with Epic or whether that's with CSI. That's not to say that we don't work with some LPL reps with CSI, because we do, because a lot of that life insurance business is OBA, outside business activity. So anyway, the difference between the two is one is, regulated. We're an IMO. We make our overrides from the life insurance and annuity solutions that we have. And then Epic just happens to be the estate and legacy planning arm for advisors and for other IMOs like CSI.
So they contract with you for their product, right?
Yeah, so they would contract with CSI Financial Group to be able to, send their business through CSI. And of course, again, that's just part of the package. And then Epic is really just the estate and legacy planning solution for them, right? Because maybe, truth be told, Epic works with other IMOs, right, to deliver the same types of services at CSI over the last 5 years. And the reason for that, it may sound weird to you guys, but the reason for that is because I wake up every single day trying to help out the mass affluent marketplace that is a totally underserved marketplace when it comes to estate planning. Again, industry jargon, right? But I can't, as one IMO, there's no way, as a boutique IMO, there's no way I can get to all of those tens of millions of households with a limited number of advisors. So that's why I wanted to expand that and try to deliver those services for advisors all over the country, no matter where they lived, no matter what, hierarchy structure they had. Maybe they work with, another IMO, and that's fine. You can work with another IMO and still use Epic services for the estate planning tools that we have. But the full total package that CSI provides is, everything: the estate planning tool, the financial planning tools, the tax mitigation. Of course, we do make WebPres available regardless, no matter which way you do it. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, or if I got on too much of a tangent there.
No, you did good. So let me ask you this. So we have more people watch the replay than watch the show.
Sure.
So Tuesday at 4:00 in the afternoon, some advisor is going to go, it's going to pop up in his LinkedIn feed. It's going to go, and click on it. Describe the advisor that watches this, that would be the advisor that would be most likely to be successful hooking up with your organization. Who are they? What's their profile?
Okay, so their profile, and one that CSI definitely identifies and targets, if you will, on a regular basis, is someone who understands life insurance and annuities, and where AUM blends in, right? So we have a lot of those IARs that work with us because they want to have their assets under management, they want to be able to sell life insurance, and they understand where annuities fit in there, right? But someone who has a marketing budget is going to be obviously ideal.
What's the
right?
budget? Between zero and 500, 500,000, or more than 1,000 a month. What's the budget?
Wait. So what were those numbers again? Because this will be important if they're listening, right?
0 and 500, 500 to 1,000, or more than 1,000 a month.
Well, it would be more than 1,000 a month, ideally. But again, we have two different programs where we'll actually front the cost for everything, right? Because that's how much we know. If you follow our process, if you're the right candidate, quote unquote, we'll pay for it all. You won't have to have anything come out of pocket. There's a different way that you pay for that, right? But that's how much we know that if you follow our entire proprietary process, there's no way you can't be successful if you have the right type of coachability, right? I could ask you the same question, right? Who's the ideal candidate for training, right? Someone who's willing to learn, right? If they're willing to learn, and if they're struggling, and maybe they're just trying to get over the hump, maybe they made, $200,000 last year, but they're not happy with that. Our system, our process, if you have typically you have a budget there, that's going to be somewhere more in the neighborhood of, maybe it's $5,000 a quarter. It doesn't have to be $5,000 a month, $5,000 a quarter, right? Well, if you're willing to invest in that, we're going to guarantee you're going to probably double your income from last year, right?
I mean, another way to say that is, so really, if they can sell one more annuity a quarter, they paid for it.
Well, exactly. And when you really look at the advisor partner marketing kit, and I want to talk about that specifically, we put this together because the downfall for most advisors, and I don't care if you're a registered rep, I don't care if you're an insurance advisor, I don't care if you're an attorney, honestly. The one downfall that most of those individuals have, is they're not good marketers, right? They don't know how to market themselves. They don't know how to brand themselves. They don't know how to create a brand awareness. They don't know how to do any of that stuff as a rule, right? There's exceptions to all these rules. So what the advisor partner marketing kit is literally everything that they need to deliver. And we create all the deliverables for them and everything based around primarily making them look bigger than they are and delivering estate planning tools and campaigns. This is where WebPres comes into play as well, to help you nurture your clientele, whether that's already existing or others. And then that's going to ultimately lead to increasing your volume of sales and clientele, that ultimately it's impossible not to make more money than you made previously.
I got a question from you. And I'm asking this question recognizing that I'm taking advantage of you, okay? So, what would be cool is if you would be open to see if one of your mentors would be willing to come on and talk to the advisors about what mentoring actually means. Because I can see a lot of advisors, like, I've had mentors over the year, but really every manager I ever had in my life that was a mentor was only a mentor if I was actually producing. But they didn't bring me up to the gate to get me to the point where I could produce. You remember the old days where they just gave you the 3-ring binder and the phone book and said, well, in 2004, you might have still got the phone book. Said, we need 5 apps in the first 90 days, right? And then at the end of 90 days, it's like, see you later, bye. So I don't know if you have a mentor that would be open to come on and say, here's what you need to look for in a mentor.
Well, I love that you're quote unquote taking advantage of me right now because truth be told, this is the beauty of everything that we've built. Remember something, our mentors use all of our processes and our platforms first and foremost. That's how it all started. They were basically the guinea pigs of all the things that I'm talking about in the first place, right? They continue to do business with us and we retain them, so to speak. We call them mentors, not because we pay them to necessarily be mentors. It's because we have a relationship with them. They could not imagine going anywhere else. There's nothing else that's going to provide for them what it is that we've done for their business first and foremost, right? So that's why the retention is there. And I have no doubt in my mind, I can think of 5 different mentors that would be more than happy to come onto this show and talk about what it is that they do and how they can help another producer produce more and be more successful and have more time with their family. Because at the end of the day, right, all the money in the world is not going to matter if you don't have the time to be able to, enjoy it, right? Dan's there in his nice floral shirt and he could go, surfing later, tomorrow morning or whatever. He wants to enjoy the fruits of his labor. Well, everybody wants to enjoy the fruits of their labor. That's what we're trying to accomplish is for them to be able to do that. I'll give you a perfect example just real quick because I know that we're running short on time. One of my mentors who's in the field works in Texas. I'll just say Texas to be a little bit specific. She only does events or estate planning events where we put the butts in the seats, fill the room, the whole deal, once a quarter. She does it once a quarter because that's all she has to work. And she's making $500,000 working once a quarter just by simply following everything that we do. Now, do you want to take a wild guess on what her commission level is? You think it's street level, or do you think we pay her a higher commission? Let me answer that because some people may think, oh, well, she does a lot of business, so you may pay her higher. She is a street level commissioned because we bring the value to her. It's not that she wants to make a higher, and who doesn't want to make a higher commission, right? But we provide such value. And if your FMO, IMO is not providing the type of value to justify, right? A lot of times, and this is not every IMO because we work with a lot of really good ones from Epic's perspective, but if they're giving you, 8%, a full point over the street level commission, they're doing that a lot of times probably because they don't really provide maybe a lot of value. Right. And if they're not providing a lot of value, you may want to question who it is that you're working with, where you're getting your products, because guess what? Every IMO has all the same products.
Well, I think one of the thinking issues for advisors is to not recognize it as a partnership, right? It's like either they're doing you the favor or you're doing them the favor, when the truth is it should be a partnership that everybody benefits from.
Well
put, Lloyd. Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that because here's the thing, the quote unquote recruiting video, again, if you go to our homepage on our website, csifg.com, you'll hear me say, we call it the advisor partner platform for a reason, right? We want to help you grow your business. And at the same time, it's going to grow our business. We're all in this thing together, right? The old saying of the rising tide lifts all ships, right? But we don't just say it. We really actually, mean it, and we deliver it in a way that is meaningful. And our advisors, when they start working with us, they never leave, ever. They couldn't imagine even working with someone else because not only do we provide the back end service whenever they do write the business, but we also provide the front end for the client acquisition to help them grow their practice.
Listen, we're going to have to end the show. So don't get off the show. When we end it, don't get off it, because Dan, I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes. But
sure.
The reason that when Dan told me he could have you on, and I've known you for years myself, the reason I thought it's such a great idea is that what I think's exciting isn't just that you're a success in the industry. It isn't just that you've got a great company and build a great platform and make a huge impact to thousands of agents. But I brought you on for all the advisors and agents that are going to watch this, who come to it downtrodden, downmouth, despair. They've lost hope. They've sunk their money in. They've taken advance on their credit card to buy telemarket leads. They've listened and bought into all these stories, and you bring so much passion. W. Clement Stone said, "Hope is the magic ingredient in motivating yourself and others." So, Dan and I don't promote what we do. If you want to do business with us, great. I didn't bring you on here to promote advisors coming to you for this. I brought them on because of your passion and your belief in an advisor having the right opportunity and the right resources can succeed no matter where they come from and what they do. And I think that your program's good. I'm not going to bring a Shylock on or somebody that I think is, going to screw advisors over. I would never bring them on the show. I know Dan wouldn't either. But that's why you're on the show. You're on the show because you bring that passion to it. I end every show with this. I tell every advisor that your prospect will only see you as a highly licensed professional, a highly trained licensed professional, if when you look in the mirror, you see a highly trained licensed professional. And you have a better chance of looking in the mirror and seeing a highly trained licensed professional if you're hooked up with people you can respect, have respect in the industry, and have proven it. You should not be interested in a great story. You should be interested in great results. So I appreciate you being on the show today. Don't jump off here, Carter. Appreciate you being on the show today. It's a replay on LinkedIn. You can find the replay on YouTube. You can find it on the Facebook channel. And here's your assignment. Everybody who watches this now or in the future, here's your assignment. Forward this recording today to an advisor that needs this information. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for being on the show, and we'll talk to you next time.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.